Welcome to today's Academy Live webcast titled Meet the Engineers of SQL Server Code Name Denali and Ask the Hard Questions. It's my pleasure to introduce today's hosts, Laura Rubelke and Chuck Heinzelman. Chuck, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome everyone to the end of the second day of the 24 hours of PASS. I heard some great things about the stuff that was being presented today, and I hope everyone got a lot out of it. My name is Chuck Heinzelman. I am a Senior Program Manager with Microsoft on the Community Strategy team, and I am joined by Laura Rubelke, who I will let introduce herself.
Hi, this is Laura Rubelke, a.k.a. SQL Gal, and I'll be helping field some of these questions as well, or keep things moving.
So the way this session is going to work is we've got a bunch of Microsoft engineers on the line. I have 4 of them listed on the screen right now. We've got a couple more that I'll be adding to that slide deck. But questions for them are fair game. I'm listing out on the screen what their specialty is, and we are very limited in the specialties that we have represented today, but we do have a commitment from marketing that if we get a question that we don't have someone on the line for, we can take that question and we will answer it in some sort of a blog post at a later date, and then we will be tweeting from the @SQL Server account about when that blog post is published. So even if we don't have a specialist on the line, you can still ask the questions, and we might not be able to answer it interactively, but we will get to it at some point. As far as asking questions go, you can either type into the Q&A pane or unmute yourself and ask the question directly. Either way works, and when we are going through questions, at some points there might be some clarification questions asked by the engineers, and feel free to unmute yourself and give the clarifications. With that, I would like to briefly introduce the folks from Microsoft that we have on the line. First off, we have Sean Boone, who is an RS specialist. We have Dan Jones, who is a manageability person, and some people have referred to him as DACPAC Dan. He is the father of the data tier application. We have Jean-Sebastian Brunner for the application platform. We have Eric Hansen for data warehousing and query processing. We can talk to him about Apollo today. And then we have 2 people on the line that I do not have on the slide yet, but as soon as we start taking questions, I will go offline and add them to the slide. We have Tobias Turnstrom and Raman Iyer. So, the first question that we have, I do not believe we have anyone from SSIS on the line today. But the first question that we have in the Q&A pane is, the SSIS package deployment model has changed in Denali. How is the new approach going to make my life simpler?
But I do want to point out, by the way, that this actually was addressed yesterday, and we do have a recording from yesterday. So when that recording is made available, you should be able to go back and listen to how they discussed the changes with the package deployment.
And I will tell you, there are some changes there that, yes, they will make your life simpler. It's a different deployment model, different variable assignment model. Very, very good enhancements there to take that product just up to the next level that it was going toward. Right now I'm going to throw it over to Laura because I know she has some questions that came in offline that we want to try to address while we're here.
Okay. Well, let's see. Where should we start? Do we have anybody online that is an expert around replication? I hear silence. Then we are going to move on to what advice for column store index? The index all columns of a table in one index, or use many indices adapted for queries? That came in from Romain.
Eric, I can handle that one.
Excellent.
Okay, so you can only have one column store index per table, and you should include in it all the columns of the table that you want to query. So typically that's every single column of the table, and There are some limitations on the data types supported by column store indexes. For example, unique identifier is not supported, and blobs and XML are not supported. But any basic small structured data types like floating point numbers, decimal, integers, strings are supported. You should include all the columns of the table, and you only have one single non-clustered column store index typically.
Excellent. Is there anyone who can talk to any plans for pivot enhancements in the works?
Pivot enhancements?
Mm-hmm.
Like to the pivot and unpivot operation in SQL?
That's what I'm, yep, it's in caps, so I'm assuming he's talking about, and this came in from Kevin, I'm assuming he's talking about the pivot keyword, yep.
No changes to that.
Okay. How will we get most out of our existing models and investments with a heavy push for VertiPack? This came from Gary.
That sounds like it's related to analysis services.
It
We're
is.
talking about models. So
yep. This is Raman here. So we had a question similar to this yesterday as well. And what I want to say is that with existing models and with VertiPack, there's what we've done is unified the two things under the BI semantic model umbrella. So you have multiple ways of creating BI semantic models with Denali right now. With existing models, while there is no direct migration path where you just switch out a flag and say this is now a VertiPack model, many of those models are recreatable under the VertiPack mode, depending on what kind of calculations you have, what kind of complex relationships are represented in your model. But there is no direct migration path as such. You have to. We're encouraging people to look at both the tabular and multidimensional models for building a BI semantic model, depending on the kind of high-end financial applications. Maybe you want to do a multidimensional model because of the complex relationships and calcs that can be defined in multidimensional. If you have a simpler model, we recommend that you use tabular going forward for new projects. So it's going to be based on the business application, which specific format you pick. And if you're doing tabular, you get VertiPack. Does that answer that question?
I think it does. We have one from our audience. Neil wrote in, "Hi everyone, have a question related to ring buffers in the current, quote, issue with the 2 megabyte buffer XML, which is a problem we have to work around. Is this planned to be resolved so we can fully take advantage of extended events that have ring buffer target?" Is there anyone that can answer that question tonight? Neil, I think what we're going to need to do, don't pull that question out yet. What we're going to do is we're going to copy that and make sure that we pull that into the offline answers that we'll provide on the blog. Sound good? So keep that in for a short bit. And this one, again, coming in for tonight, Will writes in, "For disaster recovery, have you ever considered integrating into SSMS backup a process to perform SMSS backup, a process to perform a simple volume shadow copy process to copy the DIL and other files SQL Server uses to run? Most server backup tools don't copy files that are in use, but those files are critical if the server image is restored off-site where the initialization media isn't immediately available." Is there somebody that can talk a little bit about considerations that you might have made around SSMS backup?
So this is Dan. I'm not really sure what's meant by SSMS backup. SSMS initiates an engine backup, but it doesn't really have any specific backup logic built in. I don't know if we have anybody on the phone from the engine that can speak to engine backup.
No, I don't think we do, fortunately.
Okay, so this is another one I'm copying off, and we'll make sure that we have somebody that can at least give some kind of answer to that to help you understand where we're going. Sound good? So hold on to that question for just a little bit, Will. Rob Farley. Rob Farley says, RC0 has some nice QO stuff that does good optimizations like removing the need for a spool when you do account distinct. Is that a question or a statement, Rob? Not a question, just an observation. Okay.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that.
Excellent.
Okay, so yeah, in the past, up to and including Denali CTP3, if you use multiple aggregates in a query and one of them has a distinct in it, then the query plan normally introduces a spool operator, which takes the data that feeds into the aggregate and writes it into a spool file, and then reads that reads that in a separate place in the query to handle the distinct aggregate. And writing a spool is a slow operation because it's done serially on a single thread, and it can actually involve I/O. And then any query execution after the spool operator is done serially. That means on a single thread. So it tended to cause some performance problems. And as systems got more and more cores, that became more and more noticeable. And also now that we've implemented column store technology, which processes basic aggregations extremely fast, it just sort of really stuck out because it wasn't executed using the new batch mode of execution for the column store, and also it was serial. So we've now, by the default plan for that type of query now doesn't contain a spool. It uses multiple levels of aggregation and a single stream of execution, so it tends to run faster. So that's coming out in RC0. And so that will be useful both for data warehouses that just use row store technology as well as for column store technology.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. At this point in the development, and this comes from Will again, at this point in the development cycle, how do you choose what makes it into SQL Denali and what waits for SP1 or the next major release?
Oh, I can answer that one too. So we're now internally we're in something called ask mode, which is we have a very high triage bar to take any fix into SQL Server, and mainly we just take fixes that involve either wrong results or corruption. If something like that, like an issue like that comes up, we'll fix it now. Or if there's a security issue, or there's a broken behavior that, a functional problem that will impact a very high percentage of customers, those kind of issues we'll fix now. But other things like small, performance tuning or small functional surface area changes that don't impact a lot of different customers, anything like that doesn't meet the bar right now, so we would be moving it to the next major release. So I'll editorialize a little bit. It's a little unfortunate that we've only had CTP3 out there for a couple of months, and we're getting some good feedback, and it would be nice to be able to act on that feedback in this release. But unfortunately, just because of the scale of the product and the scale of our customer base, that necessitates a long stabilization period where we need to sort of close down the release and get the quality up really high and stability really high so that we can deliver a quality product to our very broad customer base.
All right. It looks like we have a question in the queue about extended events. I notice we have Tobias online. Tobias, do you have any feedback on extended events?
Not really. Not really. It's really Mike Walker who's not here. So I think the best thing is for us to send it to him offline, and then he can answer it.
Okay. I will take this question and pull it offline. But Tobias, while I've got you unmuted, why don't you tell us some of the stuff that's coming down the road in T-SQL and SQL programmability?
Did he go back on mute?
I think he remuted himself when I was asking the question.
No, the live meeting thing got angry with me. So what did you say? Sorry, I missed that while I was trying to get unmuted again.
I just wanted a little bit of information about, some things that have changed in T-SQL and some of the programmability changes that are out there that the people online might be interested in.
Sure. I think we did quite a lot in Denali and T-SQL, and it's been kind of spread over the release for people who have seen anything from CTB1 to CTB3. Most notably, I think, is the window functions, window aggregates that were added, which is extensions to the over clause. I'm sure Eric can go deep into what this means for data warehousing as well as for other queries. Big kind of long-standing ask. And then we have sequence generators. It's basically the identity property made its own object, so you can easily get an incrementer for integers that you can use either as default constraints or in function, or rather in procedures or queries or whatnot. We added a bunch of intrinsic functions to the language as well for more powerful formatting of strings as well as parsing strings. We also added try convert functionality. So if a conversion fails, instead of failing the whole query or a statement, we just return null. We also added simple paging support. So in a query in the order by clause, you can just say, hey, offset or skip these 10 rows or 100 rows and then fetch the next 10, so that you can easily step through a result set by requerying, obviously. We added also some improvements to error handling, which is the throw statement. So throw, just like in many other languages, just raises an exception, doesn't affect transactions. And you can also now rethrow. If you end up in a catch block, you can just issue a throw statement without any arguments to rethrow exceptions. That's, I think, roughly summarizes it. There's more as well, but that's kind of the top things.
So Tobias is there now. That order by skip feature that you discussed, that's mainly useful for paging. Is that correct? Which is a common request by application developers.
Yeah, that's the typical scenario. It's especially for disconnected apps or rather web apps, where you just issue a query, get the first 100 rows or 10 rows or something, and later you want to issue the same query, just get the next 200 without having to have a cursor or something like this open. It's doable today with the row number function. It's just much easier to write this way. We implemented it the ANSI standard way, with just additions to the order by clause.
Okay, great.
Some great stuff. The next question I'm going to throw out there and see if anyone on the line is brave enough to answer this one.
Hey, Chuck.
Yes, sir.
Before you go there, I wanted to answer the profiler question. So
okay.
Right now there are no additional session templates planned for Denali.
Well, thank you for looking that one up, Dan.
Oh, you're welcome, Chuck.
For those of you that don't know, Dan is my boss, so I'm kind of being very polite here. No, the next question I want to throw out there to the panelists is, How should I convince my CIO that SQL Server Denali scales better than other enterprise relational database platforms, and there are 2 competitors listed that I will not name?
I can answer that one. This is Eric. So I'll answer it with respect to data warehousing. So we have a new column store index feature in SQL Server Denali, which is for data warehousing and decision support type applications. And it introduces a new type of index called the column store and a new query execution mode, which is based on vector processing, which reduces the CPU required to run a typical star join query in a data warehouse by anywhere from a factor of 7 to about a factor of 40, sometimes even more. So I was just talking to a customer yesterday who's using Denali CTP3, and they ran a query that touched 248 million rows in a fact table as a star join, and it ran in sub-second time on a 2-processor machine. It was actually a 4-core VM hooked to a shared SAN. So an incredibly small amount of hardware, a query that touches 250 million rows runs in sub-second time. So it's just an example of very good price performance and ease of use for decision support type workloads that's coming in Denali. So neither Oracle nor DB2 have a native integrated column store capability that is competitive with that. So this is actually a first among the major big 3 data platforms to integrate this type of technology natively in the engine. DB2 has an external or outboard query accelerator that's based on column store technology, but it's an extra add-on feature that you have to pay for, as far as I understand. And it's not natively integrated with the database, so there's going to be issues communicating back and forth between an external outboard process and the DBMS itself. So if a lot of data has to cross the boundary, there could be performance problems where our column store implementation is completely native within the engine. Oracle has something called hybrid columnar compression, which has some limited column store capabilities, but it's not a true or pure column store. It is a hybrid where each page still contains all the columns of a row, and so you don't get the I/O reduction that you can get in a pure column store like ours, where you only have to read from disk the columns that participate in the query, and only those recently accessed columns need to be in the buffer pool in main memory. So also that hybrid columnar compression is not in the regular Oracle product. I think it's only in Exadata. So anyway, in terms of just native high-performance decision support query processing capability built and completely baked into the engine, you can't beat Denali with DB2 or with Oracle.
It's also worth mentioning we're doing quite a lot in SQL Azure as well, and my dog is upset here, with federations, which is basically more on the OLTP side, allowing you to scale easily an app into thousands of databases online. So you can start off with one, and then once you run into high pressure or high volumes, you can start splitting out your data over many partitions and over many, just out over the cloud without changing your app or taking your app down.
Any other feedback from the panel? Well, what I'm going to do, we're going to move on.
I can say a little bit about, there's some scalability features. I'm not a real expert on this, but I know we have readable secondaries now is part of one of the features in Hadron. You can have multiple secondaries, and the secondaries can be readable. So that's if you have workloads that need to scale, so that you may have one primary which is receiving all the updates, and you want to scale out so you can have, let's say, a read-only reporting application on the second server or multiple additional servers. You can use the readable secondaries feature along with multiple secondaries, and that can give you some scale in OLTP applications. And also, it's just our native OLTP performance is very, very good. And with the new, the new hardware configurations that are available with, large SMPs with large main memory and SSDs, you can configure just phenomenally fast OLTP systems with SQL Server Enterprise, both on 2008, 2008 R2, as well as Denali going forward.
Another thing that we also did is huge investments in full-text search in Denali, which has been a kind of continued investment since 2005, if you will. So we have really great numbers for both for queries over full text as well as populating full text indexes which are coming in Denali.
I think what we're going to do, we're going to switch gears just a little bit. We have a manageability question. How about MSX, TSX, multi-server management? Any enhancements? Also, any enhancements to database maintenance plans, since maintenance plans will fail currently when certain conditions are not met, i.e. update stats with simple on a view will fail plan. Thank you. This comes from Eric.
Hi, Eric. Dan Jones. So for MSX, TSX, I assume you're referring to SQL Server Agent. And for SQL Server Agent around the multi-server job functionality, there are no enhancements in Denali. Also, there are no enhancements to maintenance plans in Denali.
Thanks, Dan. Curious. And here's one from Neil. Updating an existing database to a contained database, what paths would be available? Is that something that would be possible? If so, which build?
So I can answer this question. So to update an existing database to a contained database, there's no much worry to have because you can just alter any existing database, and if everything is okay, in most of the case, you will have a contained database directly. We will check everything for you. If anything is breaking the collation or if any problem occurs, you will be rolled back to the regular database.
All right, and we have kind of a follow-on question there with contained databases and policy-based management. Can you manage contained databases using PBM? I.e., can you use PBM to help mitigate some of the security risks of privileged escalation?
That is a fantastic question. I don't know the answer to that. Tobias, do you have any clue?
I'm not sure. I don't think contained databases are excluded from policy-based management in any way that I can think of, but I can't say off the top of my head.
Normally it should follow the PBM, I mean, like all of the databases.
Yeah, so the first part of the question is, yes, PBM will, there's no changes to PBM that are necessary to support contained databases. So PBM will work against contained databases. It's the second half of the question is, can you use PBM to help mitigate some of the security risks of privileged escalation? And that's part of the question I don't understand or know the answer to.
What we can do is we'll take that question and add that to the queue of questions that we'll try and address offline as well. Sound good?
I've added it to the list.
Excellent. Thank you.
Is there anyone on the line that could address an issue or a question about server deployments of server images with sysprep and issues with server name changes in that scenario?
So, if we break that question into two pieces, so one is sysprep and one is server name changes after full installation. Sysprep support was added in SQL Server 2008 R2. And so the database engine reporting services all support, or both support, sysprep. That's my knowledge. Analysis services does not yet support sysprep. In terms of server name changes, so post-installation of the product, full installation of the product, there's nothing I'm aware of in Denali that addresses changing the server name post-full installation. So there's a KP article that discusses how to do that, but there's still manual steps involved.
All right. Thank you for that information, Dan. We haven't heard a lot from the RS team tonight, and we have someone from RS on the line. So, Sean, is there anything coming down the road in RS that's really exciting that you would want to talk about? I think Sean is stuck on mute.
There we are. I had to.
There he is.
Myself. So I think with Denali, there's really two big pushes that we have with this team. The first being that we've added alerting capabilities to the product, so that if you want to set alerts on specific data points in a report, you can do that. And then obviously there's we spent a lot of time working on the next version of our ad hoc reporting client, which is being referred to right now as Project Crescent. So that's sort of a interactive ad hoc visual exploration experience. I don't know, I think maybe Paul showed some of that in his session. But it's just really designed for people to open up and connect to these AS tabular models or Power Pivot workbooks and interact with their data and get business questions really quickly without having to set a lot of properties and work through a lot of settings in order to make sense of their data.
So can we expect any changes in, say, running reporting services in SharePoint integrated mode in this release?
Yeah, so in particular, the alerting feature that we have is actually that is a feature that surfaces through SharePoint. And we've also done work to integrate the setup experience for our reporting services in SharePoint. We've actually made it a shared service in SharePoint, and the management of it takes place all within the central admin pages in SharePoint, and you don't have to manage it separately.
Oh, that is excellent. Having been a DBA that has run in that mode, it used to get pretty complicated.
Yes, we have done actually quite a bit of work to sort of streamline that experience.
All right, there's a question about edition limitations. I just have to be honest with you. We don't have any of that information. That is decided by different teams and on a different time frame than what we're working on. So I don't want to seem like I'm dodging a question. It's we don't have the information on what's going to happen with what edition and what's going to land where. So just so you know, sorry I can't answer that, but we really don't have that information. We have a question of, will you consider doing more of these fireside chats leading up to Denali and after it is released? Well, that I think we can throw to some of the folks from marketing that are on the line and see if this is something that they're interested in having us continue.
We absolutely would like to do this. If people are interested in doing it, we certainly would love to do it at things going forward, and I think my colleague Jennifer has some comments on this as well.
Yeah, we're absolutely excited to support for sure, the next 24 hours of PAS. That is scheduled in the spring, and you probably won't be surprised at the theme that we're aiming for, but we will definitely want to do this again.
So we'll hopefully be able to do them at times that aren't at the end of a 12-hour day. More news to come.
Okay, we've got another question from Eric. Will the current best practices for storage settings remain the same for SQL, the next version of SQL Denali, as they are defined for SQL 2008 in the current MSDN release? For example, offset size, cluster sizes, and also does Microsoft have best practices for specific SAN manufacturers such as EMC, etc.? I've seen many times where SAN settings were the reason for wait types, and DBAs ourselves are, at my company, would really enjoy reading such a best practice article or paper. Well, I think what we can do, we will take that feedback. That's actually some really great
feedback. This is Eric
feedback.
Hansen. Eric Hansen. I can't answer the whole question, but I can answer sort of a sliver of the question, which is related to decision support and data warehousing. So we have a guide out called the Fast Track 3.0 Best Practices Guide or something like that. If you do an internet search on SQL Server Fast Track 3.0, you'll find this guide, and it gives very detailed guidance about how to set up storage for decision support applications, whether it's direct attached storage or SAN storage. So for that can give you some information about how to configure SAN storage for use with decision support type applications. The rest of the details of the question I'd have to leave to somebody else.
And as far as any best practices documentation that could be coming, I will take that as a note offline and see if that's something that we can try and pull together by leveraging our engineering teams to help support the authoring of those papers. Sound good?
And the other thing I want to throw in there is a shameless plug for SQLcat.com. There are a lot of white papers out there that contain SAN configuration specs that they use for the testing scenarios that they were running under. So take a look out there, see if you can find what you're looking for.
We do have another question here specific to reporting services. Is there a way to manually rerun a report subscription? Currently in SQL 2008, you must determine which of the SQL agent jobs is associated to that subscription and manually execute that job. And it isn't necessarily easy to find which job is associated with which subscription. Are there any changes coming that could assist in manually rerunning those? Waiting for Sean. Sean, are you there?
Hold on here.
He's cutting in and out.
Yeah. I'm here. It's not...
there he is.
Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So I don't know the answer to that question, but take that down, and that's one of the ones we'll get included in the blog post. There's another individual on my team who I would go grab, but he is not here right now, so who would know the answer to that for sure.
So noted. Here's a question related to cross-tab querying. Pivot again. So are there any new improvements to the cross-tab querying, i.e. pivots, and associated on pivot in the relational engine slated for Denali, either RC0 or release? Nothing specific in mind, just curious. I know I should use SSI, SAS, but again, just curious. Bias, is that something you could cover?
This is Eric. I can cover that. So there's no specific changes to pivot and unpivot in Denali. You might be able to get somewhat improved query performance for pivot and unpivot if they're done on top of a column store, for example. But in terms of the functional surface area of the product, pivot and unpivot have not changed.
All right. It looks like we have a question about Resource Governor. If we have anyone on the line that wants to tackle this one, they're asking if there are any improvements in Resource Governor planned for Denali. It doesn't sound like we have anyone on that one. Then we got a bunch of...
Eric, and I would say I know the people who work on Resource Governor most of the time, and I haven't heard of anything new for RTM, but you might want to check with the SQL OS team to get confirmation.
Okay, we've got a couple other questions in the window that fall into the we don't have the answers for them related to licensing and release time frames. Sorry, we don't have those answers for you. But what we want to do now is something that we did last night that went over really well with the attendees, and that was kind of what we're calling a lightning round. We're just going to go down the line of the engineering folk that are on the line and ask them what is their favorite feature that we're shipping in Denali. It doesn't have to be something they worked on, but just something cool about Denali that either they really like or that people might not know about. So, Sean, why don't we start with you?
I'm actually going to pick Project Crescent, even though that's what I work on. But I also like all of the enhancements that we've made in the on the analysis services team to the AS tabular models that really make a lot of that possible. So the combination of that functionality.
All right. Dan, what do you have to say?
So I have to pick two, Chuck. I really can't pick one. I'm all about DBA productivity. The two that I really like are the first one, in Management Studio, we moved to the Visual Studio 2010 shell, which gives us much, much better multi-monitor support. So you can rip those tabs off and stick queries on multiple monitors, etc., which is just fantastic for productivity. And then the second one has to do with PowerShell, and we moved our implementation from what was a mini shell based into module based. So now you can very easily load up the SQL PS modules into your standard PowerShell environment and rock and roll.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have to agree with you on that multi-monitor support. It is very nice. All right, Jean-Sebastian.
So I have to pick up a content database, even if I work on it, because I really think that it's a big shift in the way we manage databases by dividing the administration of instance and databases. Starting with content database is a lot moving database between instance, and also is a lot moving to the cloud, to SQL Azure.
All right. Eric, what do you have for us?
Oh, that's a really easy question. It would be the column store index feature, or the code name Apollo, which is new in Denali, and as I mentioned before, it can speed up data warehouse queries by a factor of 10 to 100, depending on the data and the query. And if the query is the right kind of query for Apollo. And it's the kind of thing where you run it and you just can't believe how fast the query ran, and so you have to do it again a few times and pinch yourself to make sure that that you're not sleeping and dreaming. So it's really phenomenal. It makes it possible to do interactive exploration of data, where before you would have had to run a query maybe, then come back a few minutes later and check the answer. Now you can just get it in seconds and just sort of interactively explore the data. So it's mostly going to be a feature that really is going to please end users who are doing reporting and make them more productive by allowing them to explore the data better and learn more from it more quickly.
All right. Tobias, what do you have for us?
Eric almost got me sold on this column store thing. It sounds really good. I have to pick Always On, even though our team didn't work on it, but it's amazing. It's absolutely kick-ass. The new HA capabilities of Denali are amazing. Multiple secondary replicas, reporting off of replicas, automatic failover, and all of these things integrated both with Windows clustering for easier manageability than we had before with mirroring, and it is just the number one thing in Denali.
Yeah, we had Kevin Farley on yesterday talking about that quite a bit. Roman, what do you have?
Hi. Yeah, I have to second Sean on this one. It's the combination of Crescent with that beautiful experience and the underlying tabular model, the work that we did in the DAX language, and all of the other work that we did to support Crescent, which makes it this beautiful, super fast experience.
Wonderful. And someone that we haven't heard from very much tonight, UC, what's your favorite feature?
Well, I would say it's not one feature. It's probably a lot of the ANSI SQL features we added. Like, for example, the query paging, const generators, and the window functions in particular. I worked on most of this indirectly, but yeah, those are my favorite things. So these are going to really improve the developer experience so much that, I mean, you can do very intuitive solutions now much easily. So those are my favorite features.
All right, and since we got a couple extra minutes, I'm gonna ask Lara the question. What is your favorite feature of Denali?
You know, it's a loaded question, and I think there has been a case made for so many great features. I agree. You know, the Apollo, the column store is fantastic. I'm so excited about Crescent. The Always On is fantastic. It's been a long time coming. I'm very excited we've got that coming. But something that people just seem to keep forgetting about or not paying much notice to, and it's maybe not my number one feature, but I do want to get it out there so that people start paying attention to it. It's like that red-headed stepchild. Being able to install SQL Server on Core. And, you know, that's a huge thing when you need to really get that high availability, reduce the patching, reduce downtime related to patching. It's a pretty important feature, or installment option, I should say, that I don't think has been really getting a lot of playtime, but you know, it's not as big and wow and whiz bang as some of the others we've talked about. Chuck, how about you?
How about me? Let's see. Well, I'm also a big fan of Always On. I've worked in environments where we were doing some pretty strange things with database implementations, with some stretch clustering and some other things that we were doing there. And the changes in Always On make that so much easier to just manage and administer and install. You know, there really is some great stuff happening there. It's unbelievable. We do have one final question that came in, and part of it we can't address because it's related to additions and builds, and that's the information that we don't have. But are there any features that don't work well together? I don't hear anyone stepping up on that one.
I'll answer that. And full disclosure, I guess this is Eric. I was thinking about the column store. So the column store indexes are read-only. So you can't update the data with update DML. You insert, update, delete, and merge statements fail if you try to use them on a table that has a column store index. But it's not as bad as it sounds, because you can switch in a new partition into a partition table that has a column store index, or you can drop the index and do your updates and then rebuild the index. And most people have a nightly load scenario, and so they can still use column store indexes pretty readily, even though they don't support update DML. But for people that want to do like a trickle insert, it's not really easy to do that with the column store.
I do have another limitation in mind. So replication doesn't work with the container database today, so that's a limitation we have for today. We don't know when we will improve on this, but in Denali it will be limited like this.
And just one follow-up to Eric there. You could do like a writable table and do a union all in a view, correct?
You can do that, but this new query execution mode, which uses this vector-based processing, it's called batch mode execution. That doesn't work very well across union alls. So we're working on all these limitations, but we don't have any timeline we can share on when these will be released.
Fair enough. And then one final question.
Actually, if you're really bold and brave, you could write a stored procedure which would query the column store and get an answer really fast, and query the other table that you logically union together with it. It was a row store, and then combine the results with another query, and it could be super fast if the incremental additions in the row store table were small, but that requires a lot of programming.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, one final question before we go. Sean, I know you're on the line from RS. The question is, will there be a Report Builder 4.0?
Ooh, that's a great question. We are not adding additional functionality to the Report Builder client in the Denali timeframe. We are fixing. We are making bug fixes for it, whether that gets branded Report Builder 4.0 or as some sort of other dot type name. I think is still TBD. But the investment level in Report Builder is the bug fix or the bug fix level type investments.
All right. Well, with that, I'd like to personally thank all of our engineers that were on the line, and thank my cohort Laura, and turn it back over to our host to close us out.
Thank you very much, Chuck. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing on the screen right now is a survey feedback slide. Please do enter in information as you've logged into the live meeting. It will be taken to an active web page